All right, get ready because today we are diving headfirst into the world of CrossFit and their unique take on fitness.
Unique is one way to put it.
Yeah, they definitely have some strong opinions, which we'll get into.
That's putting it mildly.
Especially, when you consider this article we're looking at, what is fitness, part 1?
Oh, yeah, this one's a classic.
They don't hold back. It's like that friend who shows up to like a casual game all about functional fitness and then boom, schools everyone on the court.
I've been that friend, haven't we all? But yeah, this article doesn't mess around. They're calling it everyone. Bodybuilders.
Oh, yeah.
Even Outside Magazine, right? For that whole fittest man on earth thing with the triathlete.
Yeah, what was that about? Why were they so annoyed by a triathlete being considered fit?
Well, they actually make a good point. It all comes down to how loosely we use the word fitness without really defining what it actually means.
Okay, so they want to set the record straight.
Exactly. CrossFit, they're all about defining things their way. They lay out these 3 standards of fitness as their way of saying, here's what really matters when it comes to being fit.
All right, then, lay it on me. What's standard number 1?
So standard number 1 is all about mastering 10, count them, 10 general physical skills.
10.
10. We're talking stamina, strength, flexibility, coordination, the whole shebang. It's CrossFit's way of saying that fitness isn't just about how much you can lift or how far you can run, but how well-rounded you are, how well you can move your body in all sorts of ways.
10 skills is a lot to keep track of. How am I supposed to be a master of all of those?
Well, that's where standard number 2 comes in. See, CrossFit, they're all about being ready for anything. So standard number 2 emphasizes performing well on any task, even if it's something you've never done before. They call it adaptability over specialization.
So being well-rounded is more important than like just excelling in one specific area.
You got it.
That's kind of refreshing, actually.
Right.
Okay, so much for my dreams of becoming a professional thumb wrestler. What about this 3rd standard? What's that all about?
Standard number 3. This one gets a little sciencey. It dives into those energy systems, the complex chemical reactions that fuel every move you make.
Oh, you mean like that whole aerobic versus anaerobic thing that I pretend to understand?
Exactly. Aerobic, that's your long, slow burn,
Yeah.
like going for a jog. And then there's anaerobic, those quick bursts of energy, like sprinting. CrossFit argues that a lot of people get stuck in that slow burn zone and miss out on the power and speed benefits of incorporating more anaerobic activities.
Interesting. Are they saying long runs are, like, useless? I'm kidding. Mostly. But seriously, is there any truth to that?
Well, it's not quite that simple, but they do raise a valid point about incorporating different types of training.
I'm intrigued. Let's dig into that and their thoughts on specific training styles right after this. Okay, so we're back and ready to unpack some of these specific training recommendations from CrossFit.
It's quite the mix.
Yeah, because they go deep on interval training, like we touched on, gymnastic-style workouts, even Olympic weightlifting.
They do love their Olympic lifts.
And they really don't hold back on their opinions either. Did you see that bit about bodybuilding?
Oh yeah, they pretty much called it useless.
It was brutal. So what's the deal here, expert speaker? Are these legit fitness strategies, or is this just CrossFit trying to be, like, edgy?
Honestly, I think it's a little of both. CrossFit definitely has a flair for the dramatic, right?
For sure.
But if you can look past that, there are some nuggets of solid fitness advice in there. Stuff that's actually rooted in exercise science.
Okay, I'm listening.
Take their emphasis on compound movements, for example.
You mean like exercises that work multiple muscle groups at the same time, like squats and lunges and stuff?
Exactly. Squats, deadlifts, presses, those are your compound movements. And they're not just a CrossFit thing. They're a cornerstone of pretty much any good athletic training program.
So what makes them so special?
Well, the science behind them is actually pretty cool. When you do a compound movement, you're engaging more muscles, which leads to a greater hormonal response in your body. And that means you're potentially burning more calories, building more muscle, compared to doing those isolated exercises that target just one muscle group at a time.
So it's like more bang for your buck, workout-wise?
Exactly. Efficiency.
I like it. What about all this hype around interval training? They were really pushing that hard, even brought up a Dr. Steven Seiler to try and make their point.
Rightfully so. Dr. Seiler, he's a leading researcher in exercise physiology, and his work on interval training definitely backs up some of CrossFit's claims. See, what Dr. Seiler found is that these short, intense bursts of exercise interspersed with periods of rest, that's the core principle of interval training, can be incredibly effective. We're talking about improving your cardiovascular health, maintaining muscle mass.
So you're telling me I don't have to run a marathon to be considered fit? Because that is music to my ears.
Exactly. And, that actually brings up another point this article makes. A lot of fitness programs take this one-size-fits-all approach, right? But that's just not effective for everyone. One of CrossFit's strengths, at least in theory, is that they emphasize scaling workouts to individual fitness levels and needs.
Right. You shouldn't just jump into the most intense workout if you're just starting out.
Exactly. Meet yourself where you are. So, yeah, they get some things right.
It does seem like they're on to something with a lot of this. I do have to ask, though, about the nutrition recommendations.
Ah, yes, the food stuff.
Because they seem very passionate about a very specific way of eating.
They are. And, their stance on this whole macronutrient ratio, keeping things at 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat, this is a very specific approach.
Yeah. And is it legit?
It's definitely a choice. Let's just say it might raise some eyebrows in the scientific community.
Really?
While those macros, in and of themselves, aren't inherently bad or anything, I think modern research suggests that a more nuanced approach to nutrition is often more effective, more sustainable for most people. It's not just about hitting those specific numbers, but thinking about the quality of the food you're eating, the bigger picture.
Right, like 40% carbs could be a whole lot of broccoli or a whole lot of donuts.
Exactly. Big difference.
So it sounds like with the nutrition advice, maybe take it with a grain of salt.
Maybe a whole shaker. But, we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's clear that CrossFit has a lot to say about fitness. But how does all of this translate for someone who isn't planning on actually joining a CrossFit box anytime soon? What are the key takeaways?
So, expert speaker, we've spent a lot of time with CrossFit here today.
We deep dive deep.
We did, and we've talked about their whole philosophy, their ideas about what makes for fitness, quote unquote.
With very specific definitions.
Yes, very specific. And we even touched on that interesting nutrition advice.
Let's call it a unique perspective.
Exactly. But now I think it's time to bring it all back home for our listeners.
Bring it on home.
What can we actually take away from all of this, even if, we're not all signing up for a CrossFit box tomorrow?
That's the funny thing about these little fitness deep dives, right?
Yeah.
We get into these niche worlds, but so often we find these universal truths, these nuggets of wisdom that apply across the board.
For sure.
And CrossFit, love it or hate it, they do hammer home some key principles that are worth considering no matter what your workout routine looks like.
All right, I'm ready. Hit me with those actionable takeaways.
Okay, number 1, variety is king.
Okay.
Queen. The point is, whether you're a seasoned athlete or you're just starting out, challenging your body in different ways is absolutely crucial. For progress, for sure, but honestly, just to keep things interesting.
Oh, 100%. I've been there, stuck in a rut, doing the same boring routine, wondering why I'm not seeing results.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just need to shake things up a bit, right?
100%. And speaking of shaking things up, let's circle back to those compound movements we were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah, those are good.
So good. Incorporating exercises like squats, deadlifts, presses, those big movements that hit multiple muscle groups at once, game changer.
It's all about efficiency, right?
There you go. You're getting more bang for your buck, workout-wise.
I like it.
And while we're on the topic of efficiency, let's not forget about our friend interval training.
Ah, yeah, that was a big one for them.
Big fan. And for good reason. Short bursts of effort, followed by those quick recovery periods. It's not just a CrossFit thing. It's a really effective way to train.
So no more just slogging away on the treadmill for an hour.
I mean, if you love it, do it. But there are other ways.
I'm all about working smarter, not just harder.
Exactly. And you know what? While we're here, one more takeaway, and this one I think gets overlooked a lot. Don't underestimate good old-fashioned bodyweight training.
Ah, the OG.
You don't always need a fancy gym membership or equipment to get a great workout.
Truth. I remember when I first started working out, it was all bodyweight stuff. Push-ups, squats, lunges, and let me tell you, it was tough.
Oh, it works. Bodyweight training is super effective for building strength, improving mobility, and you can do it anywhere, anytime. No excuses.
This has been amazing. We really unpacked a lot today. Expert speaker, any final words of wisdom from you before we wrap things up?
I think the most important takeaway from all of this is that fitness is not one size fits all.
Amen to that.
What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what works for you, your body, your goals, all of that.
So well said.
And of course, as always, talk to a doctor or a physical therapist before making any big changes.
Always good advice. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to sign off. But, expert speaker, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for diving into the world of CrossFit with me, for breaking it all down.
Anytime. Always happy to geek out on some fitness stuff.
And listeners, we'll catch you next time for another deep dive. Until then, keep moving and stay curious.